Hey Harry, how are you? Welcome back.
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, glad to
It's,
be back. And how are you, Nilanjan?
I'm very good. It's always great to have you because all the episodes that I've done with you, I really enjoyed our discussion. So thanks for taking the time to jump on in. Maybe we can make this sort of a regular thing for us going forward. We'll see. Uh,
Likewise. Yeah.
what's exciting going on in your life?
Interesting stuff. So I've been pretty much sucked into the loop, is how I put it. So loops are my latest fascinations. Started with
Ah,
Jeffrey Huntley's loop,
pun
and now
intended.
it's
I like the how you're
yeah,
playing it out. That's good.
yeah. Now it's Karpathy, and I don't know. So I'm pretty much looping the loop right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
It's a very deep topic, so I wouldn't trivialize by saying what
yeah,
is what, but I think there's
yeah,
a lot to take out of that. So that's
yeah.
the current fascination for me. How's it going for you?
Good. I mean, some days are exciting. When some days Claude doesn't work well, I get bad days. I read it somewhere, which I thought was kind of interesting. There is lots of conversations about AGI and whatnot, and that guy wrote somewhere that saying if the first thing you do when you open your computer and launch Claude, we got the AGI. We have AGI already. So I sort of that's my sort of workflow. The first thing I do, get up and I put a job in the cloud and I check how's that job going. It's sort of, hey, we're working with an AGI.
Yeah,
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. The first thing I want to make it very transparent. We are playing with the branding of this podcast a little bit. So instead of saying 10x software engineer, we renamed it to 10x builder. Uh, Even though I still consider myself software engineer, there is a reason for doing that because I think builders is sort of catching up, and based on the audience that sort of listens to our podcast, they're not necessarily quote unquote traditional software engineers. So we thought it makes logical sense for us to embrace that idea of builder that anyone can build potentially. But before we get further, I'd like to get your input on this. That how do you define builder? Because there's lots of confusion out there.
oh yeah, that's interesting. Like, the analogy that came to my mind is a recent talk that I was listening to, and someone introduced me to this term, French term, and I'm gonna butcher it. It's called auteur or something like that. It's spelled Auteur. It's one of the a director who's got so much influence on the writing that he's probably a writer director, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if we draw an analogy to engineering and software engineering, so to speak, the product engineers or product owners are like the people who own the screenplay, and the rest of us are like the engineers. We bring that story to life, right, like the directors do. So now we're all, if we in the movie making land, we all do everything. So we write and we direct and we bring it to life. So I guess that's what a builder is to me. We are multidisciplinary beings, so to speak, and
Mhm.
we are probably good at many different tasks and probably not
Mhm.
great at one single depth.
Mhm.
Maybe our depth
Mhm.
is in one area, right? Like, I
Mhm.
still consider myself an engineer, very much like yourself, Neil.
Mhm. Mhm.
And maybe there will be product owners who still have their forte in the business. But,
Mhm.
yeah, a multidisciplinary being and an author, so to speak, is
Yeah, yeah.
who a builder
I
is.
I I love that analogy. I mean, this analogies like this is always I thrive for because we're going through a transition. I always feel like other industries potentially has gone through that, and it's always great to see how others evolved and sort of learn from it. So it's a great way to think about it. So with that said, I got some stories. The way we are organizing this podcast here, Harry and I, is to sort of walk through what builder's life cycle looks like. And I want to start with something positive. Let me share my screen here. Um, Now there is, yeah. So there is a lot of obviously major discussions around layoffs happening everywhere and people sort of losing jobs. The very depressing news coming from social media, but lots of the social media sort of thought leaders are not tracking something that I thought was interesting. I saw a recent graph from Indeed.com, which is a very popular job aggregator, I believe. Um, they their sort of growth chart showing that there is an increase in number of jobs opening for builders. I'm not necessarily not going to stop saying software engineering job, builder jobs. It's not back like pre-COVID era, but it's actually creaking up. That brings up to this sort of news article I saw recently posted by this company called Sierra. They sort of changed their interview process. And this is something I know, Harry, you and I are sort of passionate about. And we both used to be ThoughtWorks back in days. I don't know how they interview right now, but back in days used to be considered a very thorough interview process. It was like a couple of weeks long. You traditionally used to have a take-home exercise, then one day with the team and all that. I mean, thorough. They just probably sort of checks you to like 360-degree to make sure you're really a perfect fit. Obviously, some of those aspects really doesn't sort of translate in AI era, right? Take-home exercises when coding agents are doing most of the problems makes sort of no sense now. So I like the angle this company is sort of taking, right? I mean, they still have those same categories. There is sort of not a take-home exercise. Their pre-screening interview is more like system design. So they're sort of, I guess, raising the abstraction layer a little bit, right? So their abstraction layer sort of is that, hey, can you think in terms of system, right? If coding is solved, I'm not going to check whether your syntax is correct or you know how to write Java code or Scala. It's more like, can you build a complex system? What does that looks like? And then the other aspect that I really liked is there's AI native on-site interview. When I first read this article, I thought, okay, is AI interviewing humans? It's actually not. They're sort of augmenting their interview process, thinking the AI is going to be in the center. So I really like this idea, which is classic for builders, right? Their on-site is essentially you come up with a product idea that you have to build in a couple of hours. Okay, the candidate drives sort of ideation interviews. There will be questions, like others going to be asking questions about product. What product idea? Something that you're passionate about, whatever you specialize in. It could be a developer tool. It could be accounting software. It really doesn't matter. Whatever product you want to build, it's up to you. And they will sort of poke holes and ask questions about idea. Then you sort of interviews stepped out, and candidate sort of brings that idea in live in 2 hours. And you're happy to use whatever tools and functionality you have. I thought this was really, really interesting because suddenly now you're testing like exactly like a contour, right? Are you designing? Are you thinking about what features to build and why do that feature? And all that aspects that's sort of becoming more important now.
That's really awesome. Like, the parallel I can draw here to the ThoughtWorks interview process, if I may, is we were really trying to figure out how a person thinks, not about what they do. It was largely about trying to get inside their head. At least I felt, how do I put it? Psychologically, probed, so to speak, during the interview. And that's what I probably also try to understand, like where the person's head is at in terms of how they approach a problem. And that's clearly what they're trying to do here is my interpretation, at least from what's written there.
Yeah. And I think obviously, I mean, I reason I brought this story up is that I think they're very transparent. Obviously, they're prototyping this. I mean, I also like this idea of, I mean, you know this. Sometimes it's super easy to vibe code something 0 to 1 using these tools. But there is completely another thing, the pain point I was describing last night to you, is sort of get an existing code base and improve that code base. So they're trying some other aspects of like debugging interview, for an example, to see candidates can handle medium-sized code base and draft a PR and sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's I thought it's what if you are a senior person in your organization and you're looking to interview and worried about, hey, they're going to use AI to do all that stuff, this is probably a good way to think about that new process.
Especially the one-to-end part, I think that's really, really cool because it's quite easy to, like, it's one thing to work with a greenfield and it's a completely different skill to wrangle with a existing beast. And that kind of is a true measure of a person's ability to grasp philosophically, then drop down to a lower level and then take a gist out of what's in the code base, right? So that's really cool about that.
So there is a one aspect that I saw recently. You mentioned something that's sort of very interesting, right? So you and I sort of now vibe coding stuff to production, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
operate in another layer. It's not that because we are smarter than others. I mean, because we have an software engineering experience, I think we can operate that level. Um, so you mentioned something right? Vibe coding in production needs different types of skill set, right? The open spec, how you validating, and all that stuff. That's also is I think what this debugging interview process gonna. I mean, you still can use AI to debug your code base, but you have to now logically think in terms of systems and side effects and all that stuff.
And if
Um,
you got an hour, and if you had to figure out everything within an hour or two, then you better
yeah,
have your ability to parallelize. And for example, like maybe you use sub agents to try
yeah,
out different approaches. And the
yeah,
good part about this interview, what I like is, I think any
yeah,
good high quality interview process is not inherently scalable
yeah,
when we start with it. It has a human aspect to it. You need to get
yeah,
involved. Eventually, maybe there are parts to it which you can sort of industrially
yeah.
scale out and have many people try it. But I kind of like the idea that this is very personal. So you need to get
I
to know the
like,
person.
yeah, I like this. This is worth highlighting. Thanks for bringing this up. So, what did we learn? We are hiring for strengths, not absence or weakness. I like this. So what they're trying to get richer signal. That's essentially what interview is all about, right? Are you trying to get a signal from this candidate? Is this going to good fit? So I like it. They're not talking about should we hire this person. They're more interested where will this person thrive, and how should we support them. And this tells you. I mean, I feel like I show up to interview for this company. This tells you like a good interview process at the end, even if you don't get picked, should feel like you have learned something.
That is correct.
And I feel like they share that same philosophy here, so which is amazing. Maybe if you're looking for a job, go for this company, and they feel like a great place to work. All right, switching gear a little bit to everybody's building agents. So switching gear to
Yeah,
something called
this
this
one's like the crazy
workspace
one.
agents that ChatGPT released recently. This is their sort of attempt to revamp. Remember the back in days they used to have custom GPTs. Have you ever used custom GPTs?
I indeed have built a few just as a assistant GPTs, deployed
Uh-huh.
them, had people use them, and yeah. But the big problem was obviously they were highly limited in what capacity. It was probably just a glorified chat. Chatbots were
Is that was
correct.
the limitation of the model or the limitation of tools?
It was a computer use related limitation, is my
Mm,
understanding of it, right? Like I back then, it was
mm,
like okay, this thing is there. Maybe the tools that I built were largely around documentation bots and like help me with this thing through this bot and things like that. And those are
yeah,
the GPTs that I
yeah,
built. They didn't really
yeah,
do much beyond that. Like they were part of the chat. They were like that nice moral support, but beyond that, like to actually get the work done. What I
yeah.
like about this whole thing is the general direction Codex
Hi.
is taking in terms of the
Yeah,
computer use. That's
yeah,
the part I love about it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, so obviously, this is their sort of attempt to compete with co-work and other co-work, yeah, cloud co-work, yeah. So it's I'm just going through the notes. They call workspace agents. They're supposed to be sort of they're for enterprise clients. That's one of the reason I don't have access to this because I don't have an enterprise account. But enterprise clients looking at the demos, they probably connect to whatever tool you're using, Salesforce, Slack, obviously, email, Gmail, Google Drive, all that stuff, which is sort of important. They're positioning it as like what Harry said, right? This is all I mean, that's why every labs is going after. Once you build a good coding agent, I feel like everything sort of falls in place for you, right? You can just build layers on top of that. And I think that's the approach they're taking. This shared context approval. You can do long running workflows in here. You can integrate human in the loop and all that stuff. Concrete stats. I've been hearing some companies are already obviously using it, getting 5 to 6 hours. There's always some amazing numbers in here. Their pricing model seems reasonable to me, credit-based pricing. But one thing that bothers me about this is, one hand, this guy is sort of shows you how prompt to agent, right? Anyone can build agent, which is great because who wants to build another CRUD app, right? This is sort of solving that CRUD app problem for us. But then, other hand, Harry, you and I spent tons of time figuring out agent harness and reliability, how to track all changes and stuff. Like, this feels like conflicting to me, right? I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
See, I think the first aspect here, the good part, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
I've seen this pattern where I've slowly started, sunsetting many subscriptions that I used to have. So, for example, I
Mm,
had a CMS subscription
yeah.
for a website, and then I did not need it anymore because I had like design agents and whatnot. So I could
Right.
actually like live edit my website and deploy it. I really didn't need a CMS because it was
Mm,
so much easier. So I just got rid of it. And eventually, I
yeah.
got rid of my campaign management tool and stuff like that. So from
Mhm.
that point of view, this workspace is again like slowly getting into that space where like SaaS product, so to speak, that I'm currently subscribed to, I can sunset that and probably put that budget into this and like start
Right.
making use of it. But
Right.
the difficulty I feel personally is the same problem. Again, when you go into a single prompt to working software, which is the
Mm,
problem that we've spoken about time and again, is there is no surface of control for me there.
mm,
And an agent is essentially a piece of software that I'm building, right? A workspace agent. It is
mhm.
going to have bugs. It is probably
Yeah.
going to go through a few iterations. I may have
Yeah.
missed things. I want to improve it. So I
Yeah.
have not used it again. Like what you said, I don't have access to it right now. But
Yeah.
the first thoughts that come to me is how do I maintain this over a period of time, and
Mm,
how do I even make it model independent, so to speak, right? That keeps coming to my mind because what if the prompt is something that's working with a certain temperament of a model,
right.
and if I switch the model, is that going to affect me? I don't know. Like, and
Yeah.
so what's the guarantees? Like, how do I get
Right.
some minimum guarantee? I'm not looking for 100% perfect predictability. I just
Right.
want some minimum guarantee that these things will never happen. And how do I have an engineering surface around an agent? I don't want to be lulled into this, a single prompt to working agent situation. Like, I'd
Yeah.
prefer a little bit more sophistication is what my head is at.
Yeah, and not to mention this. This is doing follow up, sending emails. I do see in some of these videos here. I'm just watching this one here, lead outreach agent. They do have sort of drafts the email, then I think it drops, but it never sends, so you still
Mm.
have in the loop. I mean, that sort of makes logical sense. But I'm with you. I mean, this goes back to the point that I bothers me. Like, and now every now and then I'll meet somebody. Hey, I can create a CM. I don't need HubSpot. I'll just build my own CMS with Claude. Sure, you can, but should you though? I mean, the question becomes is that how critical. So it goes back to the idea: is this a disposable software? Then sure, this is great. But if you're trying to build something that's going to be part of your infrastructure, it's good running. If it doesn't work well, could potentially affect your customer outreach. In some cases, your production code base. I mean, then what Harry's saying, what you're saying, sort of makes a lot of sense to me. Then you need to think through maintainability and versioning and quality and all that stuff.
In a way, like I kind of do like just a point, not sure if this is in the right direction, but my head in terms of like building my own CMS, building my own versions of
Yeah.
these things. Obviously I don't
Mm.
expect it to be foolproof, right? Like you rightly
Yeah.
put it. The whole
Yeah.
point is when we were living with software which were COTS products, like commercially off the
Yeah.
shelf products, we
Yeah.
are making a compromise to that paradigm or their opinionated way of thinking and trying to make our workflows fit into that. And there is a
That's a good point.
lossiness there, right? Versus if I'm building
Mm.
something for myself, I am tailor making it. So I'm kind of okay with not having the 100% capabilities that I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
even if it's not there, I have the confidence to say I'm just a hop, skip, and jump away from where
Yeah.
achieving that. But that
Yeah.
said, I still cannot afford to have like so much non-determinism and
Yeah.
loss of control. That is the
Yeah.
part. Like that, I am with you. Like I cannot sleep well with that level of
Right.
non-determinism.
Right. 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 But I do see, I mean, tons of use cases in here. I mean, this is a classic way of say, hey, I mean, like we do, right? Let's create a bash script to automate or build or
Yeah,
CI/CD. This is like a GitHub Actions analogy in here. These are all
precisely.
little bits of automations that you can do to make your day better, get get those hours back essentially. So yeah, if you have a enterprise account, I think education account or whatever the other 100 variants of subscription model they have, you if you get access to this sort of plays with you. One thing good about this is that you don't have to worry about deployment, runtime environment, and all that. Seems like they sort of manage that for you, which is great. Okay. All right. So next thing we're going to move on, which I think both of us got really excited about, is so as we start building. Let me share this. As we start building software as or building products like with builders, right? When we spend tons of time about coding and implementations. One thing that gets sort of lost, I felt like, was is sort of design, right? And so my way of designing, before we talk about design MD, and I'd love to get your input on this, my way of designing is still pretty old school. I have a designer in the team. We brainstorm ideas, then he creates the Figma design. We still use Figma. Then Figma goes down to the front-end developer and we build. So that's old school style. And obviously there are lots of AI stuff we are trying to do there. But this taking sort of a different approach here, right, Harry?
Yeah, that is indeed right. It is kind of formalizing what design is, and like what does it make, what does it look like to externalize your design thought process, so to speak. The one problem I used to suffer with personally is my designers always complain that I'm really poor at explaining what I want. But I know that when I see what's a good design, I can say, yes, this is a good design, right? But filling that gap is always the difficulty that I've felt between my designers and myself. And with that, remote working was always very difficult. So with
Correct.
this, design.md, I think is a interesting step. Like if you're chatting and using that to build the design.md, there is that incremental gap filling that's happening between like where you are at and what you want to do.
Right.
So yeah, this might be a interesting thing to look at.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed that this is a sample. This is what the MD file looks like. My first reaction was like, dude, we already have CSS. Why are we doing something like this? Why can't models read CSS? I mean, models can read CSS, but so obviously one thing I realize is this sort of interesting. Like CSS, it has the tokens have value, obviously. In this case, colors are very specific primary. All these are color codes. But the MD allows you to provide context. I mean, that is fundamentally missing in CSS. I mean, you can put your design thoughts in here, like why did we pick it? Because we are going for the minimalism architecture here, which I thought was really, really good context, because that gets lost again, right? I mean, my designer designed something. There is no place for him to sort of share the context why he thought through like that, which I thought was really, really interesting. There are tons of, so you add that empty file, there is an NPX. I mean, Bravo, this is from Google, right, Harry?
Yep, that is
Yeah,
indeed right,
Google.
because it comes from the
Yeah,
Stitch house.
yeah.
So Stitch is what was originally the tool under which we were trying to do the design, and I think this is out of that school of thought.
So I saw something that people are doing. Design MD. I'll share this. There are already sites like this, which is sort of becoming directory of. So it's just a great way to sort of open source your design files now. So this sort of becomes an aggregator where you share design. You can look at these designs. If you feel like, oh, this is a great style, I want to copy. Now you don't have to copy like take a screenshot of a landing page and give it to Claude saying do this. You can essentially now just add the design.md file to your coding agent, and they will take
This
care of it.
almost seems like a little akin to how there's this repository called Venwords. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's an interesting repository. So Venwords is basically
Win
a
WIN words. Yeah.
it's WHEN, when, and words.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, you can search GitHub when words.
Yeah.
There's nothing in that repository. So basically, all that it says is I want to build a library
Yeah.
that is able to convert time into wordy way of putting it, right? Like it's the
Mhm.
7 evening, 7 p.m., whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So this
Mhm.
previously, if we had to distribute this kind of logic, we would all write like a library projects in each programming language and then share it. But instead, now what you're sharing is just the specification for what
Yeah.
that code would look like, and
Right.
then suddenly there is a whole class of software that's erased. So now, if you want to interpret it in your own language, you can interpret it.
Right.
So, for example, even installers are now a thing of the past, because I
Right.
can literally write an installer as a
Yeah.
markdown file and say, just follow this, right? I don't
Yeah.
need to write a chocolatey, I don't need to write
Yeah.
a brew, I don't need to write this and
Yeah.
that. So, this
Right.
analogy for design is pretty much the same. I don't
Yeah.
need to
Totally.
give you an
That
entire
sounds.
design.
That's correct. So almost like this IKEA model. You get all the ingredients, you go and build on your own, right? That's what you have to do with WinWords, right? You add the spec and ask Claude to build me a Java library or Python library.
Precisely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this looks something like that to me. That's how I
Yeah. It
interpreted it.
totally does.
Maybe it's not the exact thing, but it's a way
Seems-
of pulling out an
Yeah.
abstraction.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, this is now imagine for builders like us who are not good designers, or I personally like a design sense of this. I'm like you. When I see a good design, I can say, well, that looks really good, but I cannot describe it. This is a gold mine. I mean, I can just totally copy this and say, hey, man, I like this font size, this color combination, just use this. Now, interesting bit, this is where I'm going to pull you in here. Interesting bit is that Claude also released something, isn't it, around this? What they're calling it?
Yeah,
Claude Design?
Yeah, Cloud Design just got released, and that's kind of interesting too, because there it allows you to create a design system, which I've been using quite actively. Like, you can create a design system there, and you can create a website out of it. You can create your artifacts for your marketing or your mailers or your slide decks and everything. So Cloud
Yeah.
Projects is what I was earlier using for
Mm.
websites, and PowerPoint
Hmm.
Skill is what I was using for creating my slide decks and stuff like
I
that for
see. Hmm.
proposals.
Hmm.
But I did not have much success in terms of creating a consistent outcome. I was struggling with that design capability, right? Like header, footer. Like, I have a letterhead, I want a
Yeah.
slide deck, and I want a
Mm.
like a contract format, right? All of this with the same logos and stuff. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard. But now I just ported it over to Cloud Design, and the
Yeah.
first thing I did there was like create the design system, and then thereafter, whatever I have created,
So
it is
when you say
kept
design
into.
system, what do you mean? Just describe that for audience.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So a design system is basically a collection of what are your choices for the color palette, the fonts, the overall structure of the grid layout. What is your take on, let's say, how an article looks? What does a
Mm.
comparison table look like? How does an image look like, etc. Right? A design
Mm.
system is a collection of these things which kind of gives the how do I put it? It's the scaffolding of a website,
Correct.
or scaffolding of a design.
Yeah.
A design system, like, so to speak, is the system that is a definition of what that any design that comes out of it looks like, right?
Yeah.
So, in plain simple terms, just a collection of fonts, colors, and how the look and feel is supposed to be, etc.
So I think so. I was trying to play with it. I know you build a landing page. Do you want to show it, or do you want to take over the screen? Of
Yeah, maybe I can just quickly share my screen and what
yeah,
it
yeah,
looks
yeah,
like,
for
and
sure, for
I'll
sure,
just show you
for
that.
sure. Yeah, let me. How do I
So
stop
this
it?
is my design
Stop sharing.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, go for it.
I am not able to see the screen share. Maybe
Okay,
it's still
add
showing.
your screen. Yeah. Okay, here you go.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So this is what my design system looks like, right? So this is my existing website, and it's kind of it's got like what are the colors and everything. I've kind of discussed with it, and I have decided like this is how it's going to look. And once this is decided, then I can go back to my home and then say, this is my intent driven development design system. This design system consists of all the fonts, and like I'm still supposed to upload stuff and whatnot. So based on this, I can go back and then say I would like to create a slide deck. So let's say I want to create a 10x builder slide deck, and then, like,
Yeah.
the design system I choose is I don't know why it's not showing me, but any which way. But basically, you get the idea. I just
Yeah.
choose the design system, and from there I pick up and run with my what do you call the slide deck, and that's pretty much all. The colors, the font sizes, the the detailing of it, everything is taken from one place, and this is kind of like version controlled and stuff like that. So if I'm changing a certain look and feel, I can consistently maintain it. So what it gives me is a lot of control and consistency
Mhm.
across all the artifacts that are generated. In terms of design, whatever it is that I'm generating, right, is not just a website. So this
So
guy underneath, yeah,
is
sorry.
Figma cooked then?
Not necessarily. In fact, Cloud Design works with Figma. I can import a Fig file. I can import a Canva. Again, like I don't know. Like I'm not a very strong aficionado of any tool, so to speak, right? But there are designers in my cohort who, they love Figma. They wouldn't get out of it for whatever reason, right? So
Yeah,
then I could start there and then bring that into Cloud and say, use this
yeah,
design system and then do the rest of the work for me.
yeah,
There's a little bit
yeah,
of back and forth, and I don't know where this will settle. I don't know if
yeah.
this will kill like a Stitch or a Figma or something like that, but feels like I can live without a Figma because I designed this whole thing without Figma, and I'm not a designer, right? I just put the whole thing together and had it reviewed, and the designer was like, "Okay, yeah, I think you seem to have got a knack for it now." So I guess that's a good seal of approval.
So, I mean, obviously, stock market doesn't agree with you. The Figma prices are so their market price is drastically down because I own when they came out. I love that company. They have done really good, but I mean, I feel like you're absolutely right. I mean, I think from going back to the builder's perspective, I mean, some of us who are engineers or product managers coming in, not necessarily quote unquote designers, I think they might feel this more natural than Figma. But there's nothing stopping Figma to sort of go back to this interface. There are lots of products out there too. I mean, there was another product that we covered recently called Pencil.dev that also sort of if Claude and Figma make a baby that sort of looks like that. So I
The
think,
one part I'm not too sure about and I don't like about all these tools are, let's say, not like, right? It's more about I feel lacking is I am not very fond of the chat interface, right? I don't think it is
mm,
precise. It just gives me a lot of grief in
yeah,
terms of how
yeah,
what I want to change. I want to visually move things around and have that ability to control. So if you know what I mean in code, the worst thing that I can do if I don't know how to prompt is I can actually just say, this is what I want you to do. Tell me how should I even prompt this from you, right? So I
yeah,
have
yeah,
that final control surface in terms of what I want to
right,
do. But
right,
because I'm constrained as a design person, I don't
yeah.
know enough. Here I'm stuck with this chat interface, and sometimes it does get to that point where I'm at stalemate with the model and I
Yeah,
can't make any better changes than
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I'm in the camp of it's a very interesting. Obviously, there was lots of issue with token pricing recently with Anthropic, right? Design has its own token limits, and it uses different type of it charges differently too, and I don't know. I mean, there are lots of stuff going on with
Yeah,
Anthropic there
too many
because
things.
that's fine because I mean it's okay relatively. I understand because they're moving so fast. I mean, I understand there will be few things like this, but I personally feel like and this could be interesting. I mean, there is lots of discussions around where open source is heading. I mean, just raising the discussion a little bit. At the core, I feel like the the core mechanics of how we build things. I feel like open source is a very smart way to do this. I mean, I envision design.md is going to gain traction. That's my feeling because I think it will be super easy for people to translate and sort of stand encode. Right, this is exactly your version of open specs, right? I want more control. I want to set boundaries, constraints. I think Design MD exactly allows us to do that.
Certainly fits in that bill of description. The only
Yeah,
part I'm still like, let's say the jury's out from my side is
yeah,
I want to see how well this fits into the overall workflow, right? It's
mm,
not, it could be independently brilliant, but
yeah,
I don't know how it plays out when I have the entire workflow in place, which is like
yeah,
from inception to implementation of a
yeah,
feature. I want
yeah,
that whole journey to be coherent with a single line of thought. be
Mm.
it design, be it architecture, be it the actual code that's written, or to the final deployment nodes that happen. Everything has to be following that one thread, and everything should be coherent with that.
It's
I
a
want to
very good
see how
insight.
design fits into that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it does feel like it's a separate sort of exercise that you do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I see that. So anyway, so these are some interesting stuff happened. This all happened. All the stuff that we're just
So
talking
many
about,
things
it just all
happening.
happened
That's the
in,
big.
I mean, last 3 4 days. It's just crazy how fast this world is moving. So I do have. All right, let's see what we're going to talk about. So there are a bunch of sort of model news. I don't know whether we want to cover this, but one thing that I really like to talk about, since we are talking about Anthropic here, something that let me open this link here for a second. This here. Now, the reason I like this story, obviously, because it's Elon Musk. I'm a big fan. But the interesting partnership that's sort of bubbling up here. And I think the XAI, the company behind SpaceX, Tesla, I think it's all coming under that one umbrella. Mistral is an European, I think it's French company. They have an open source. They're very powerful. This is probably the best outside US competitor, right? Everything OpenAI, Anthropic, all US company, right? This is a non-US company, sort of competing at that level, apart from China, obviously. And Cursor sort of thinking of building a partnership just to sort of fight with OpenAI, Anthropic.
Mhm.
The reason I sort of like this, obviously, because I think competition is obviously a good thing, because right now the market definitely feels like Anthropic sort of getting all the limelight, right? They're winning, their revenues are off the chart, right? Which goes back to our discussion you and I were having, right? I mean, Codex made a bunch of interesting releases recently too. Their CLI, their Mac OS, and I know you use Codex a lot. So I mean, I think having this competitor in the space is overall good for us, because I fear that we stuck with Cloud Code, and Cloud Code keep playing with their token prices, which is sort of getting very, very expensive lately, right? And
In
your
fact,
experience with Codex has been really good, though, right, Harry?
yeah, Codex is a lot more. How do I say? At least anecdotally speaking, I haven't run out of tokens or run out of limits, so to speak, within a day. And with Anthropic, I do run out more often. It could also mean that I'm using a lot of Claude. I don't know if I want to really get into like what is right and wrong about the way the tokens are being managed and budgeted. But that said, I think the bigger point, which I agree with you, is the competition is good. And like for instance, like the big thing, which sort of an insight which happened to me a couple of weeks ago, is I was trying to run a workshop for a small company. They were adopting AI, and we were teaching them how to use Cloud Code and
Mm,
writing code with that. And a bunch of these participants were running out of their quota, and
mm,
the company had to keep bumping up their overall usage. And
mm.
I noticed that all of them were by default or on Opus model. I was like, why? Can you not do with Sonnet? Sonnet is a reasonably good model. Why
Yeah,
are you even going to Opus? And then the reaction
right.
was, Opus is great, let's do it. And the person from their side mentioned, Hari, why are you being so stingy? I'm okay with spending the money, let's bump up the model and just start using it. But
Right.
then like what it hit me is, what I personally look at is, if I'm good at my context engineering chops, it's
Yeah.
probably got to work well with even a mediocre model, right? Not the best of the
Mm,
best model.
mm,
So
mm.
mark of a good context engineering capability is not the best model, but even if you have a mediocre model, you can get the most out of it. Of course, if you
Yeah.
take that skill and apply it to a good model, you get even better results. That's
Yeah.
uncontested. But that
Yeah.
said, like I think the whole point is this, right? Again, I don't have any particular way of thinking about that article itself, like whether they should combine or not. But yes, like we do not need to be in the situation where we get too super dependent on one model or one company. or one harness for that matter. I've always been an open source aficionado. For me, I'll always want to, like, have that ability to use free market capabilities, so to
Yeah,
speak, right? And yeah,
yeah,
that's where my head is at. And yeah, Codex is definitely a very good coding agent, and I personally like it. I like 5.3 Codex as a model. I use
yeah.
it with open code independently as well as with Codex CLI, which is also
Right.
exceptionally good.
Yeah. So speaking of codecs, obviously the GPT 5.5 came out, which is a new model. I mean, we stopped covering model news, guys. I mean, but it's worth mentioning because we're talking about codecs here. I mean, it's impressive numbers. Obviously, I'm looking at their sort of benchmarks in here, but they've been positioning this, which is sort of interesting, very much around codecs, right? This is obviously has better coding capabilities. I think it's worth flipping because my experience lately, and Claude guys have recently admitted that too. I feel like the model has gone a bit dumber. I'm having a lately very frustrating experience with Opus 4.7. I'm willing to go back to the other older version, honestly. They're saying because they changed the thinking model and whatnot, thinking to medium to high, whatever that is. But going back to what you said, right? I mean, I think it's very, very important to sort of keep a tap on that. And the token prices are getting off the charts. I mean, I think we are getting to the point where, and it might be crazy talking here, and I know there are lots of companies are thinking, oh, we're going to replace builders with AI. But some companies are getting into the point their token prices are off the chart. They're just maxing out budgets that they have allocated for year within first quarter. So they're sort of thinking, because at some point this things gets expensive. I know we've been one point encouraging everybody to use AI, but on the other end, we have to start thinking about it because nothing's stopping these companies to raise their token prices. And I know Anthropic is pushing limits there here and there. So it's good to have options. Uh,
And there's no way of saying whether the model is objectively good or bad, right? Like, of
mm,
course, the benchmarks is a different story. But
yeah,
let's say I am using a model, and a newer version of the model comes in and I start using it, and suddenly I'm not as productive, right? That I only know anecdotally. I wouldn't be
right.
able to really put a finger on it saying, the model is objectively worse. So that's a
Yeah,
weird position to be in. So,
right.
yeah, probably better not depend too much on the model
Yeah,
is a word of
yeah.
caution for anyone who's in this space.
So speaking of tokens, I know you mentioned one term yesterday that I thought was hilarious, caveman prompting. What is that?
Oh yeah, okay. So that's interesting. I came across this article. It's actually pretty brilliant, right? When you read it, it's like, damn, like everyone should have thought of this. Like, why all the pleasantries, so to speak, right? Like, can we just talk like Neil talk, Hari code, Neil review, uh, Hari fix bug, don't be idiot, right? That's pretty much all we need to do, like in terms of
So
prompting,
I
and that
found this article. Is that the one?
yeah, that's pretty
Was
much the one.
okay, okay, okay. Go ahead, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, it's kind of like it reduces a ton of tokens. You just speak in a limited vocabulary. You speak in limited tokens, and most likely for technical direction, it is not necessary to be extremely articulate and use the most Shakespearean of English, so to speak.
Yeah,
Right? Fair enough.
yeah,
It's a good take on things, and it's a good reminder to say that, hey, there are fundamental things that you could do to, like, reduce token usage. But on the
yeah.
contrary, where I also feel is, are we really saving pennies and dollars here? Like, there's
Right.
bigger things to do. Like, of course, if I'm still, my quality of prompt is still very poor, I could
Yeah,
still end up using a ton of caveman tokens, so to speak, and
yeah,
I still might be over token budget. But
yeah,
it's okay. I mean, eloquence doesn't cost a lot. You could be a little eloquent, but you can be precise also. So you could
yeah,
reduce and token size there. But nevertheless, I just purely like the fact that someone just thought of this hack, right? That's
yeah.
that's
I love
the
it.
brilliant.
I love this. I mean, I should move to Whisper and stuff. I work from very noisy places most of the time, so I don't use voice. I type it in. So the caveman is, I mean, for me totally. This also applies to something that sort of interesting. All this 6 months or so, maybe last year, we spent tons of time about prompt engineering. make sure you write your prompt correctly and all that. It turns out that models actually don't care. What matters is the context, what you fit in. So it's very interesting.
And I think it's also like, no matter how big your context windows get, there is still like what you get in the right in the beginning of your context is really really
Yeah,
important. And I think
yeah,
the one golden advice anyone can take away for context engineering is don't make your agents.md or your cloud.md like 500 lines, right? Really doesn't help.
right,
Yeah, so
right.
anyway, back to you, Anil Lanjan.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So we have few more minutes. What do you want to talk about? We have a couple of stories in here. Obviously, auto research is one. I think you should. There is another one called Codex Computer Use. Which one we should? Which one you feel like you want to talk about?
I think we kind of covered Codex, so to speak, right? Like in the sense
Yeah,
that the
yeah,
only
yeah, yeah.
point we
We
kind of
did.
left there is the
Yeah,
fact that it's an interesting point now. It's like its way of computer use is very very interesting. It directly is able to work with Mac apps, build a lot of automations around that.
do you know
Versus
how they do it? I mean, I heard about this, but I never got the details. Like, what do you mean by that? They use better computer.
So it actually is able to like interpret your screen and is able to click on buttons versus how a co-work setup works, right? A co-work setup
Yeah,
is more about permission, it's about folder access and file access,
right,
and then it
right,
goes and does the job. But
right.
Codex, I forget the name of the company that they acquired recently, and that's the one which brought in all this capability, if I'm not wrong.
So
And now
they're natively not look. So what you essentially saying is that they don't take screenshots and do pixel mapping. They have much better understanding of the app.
or rather they are able to work at a abstraction layer where they don't need to understand the app, they just able to interpret it. Again, I for lack of better understanding of the system, I
Okay,
don't
okay,
want to say that this is how it
okay, okay,
exactly works.
okay.
But at least
Maybe we should
anecdotally
do a deep
speaking,
dive on that at some point. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
maybe next time when we catch
Yeah.
up we should do a
Yeah. Yeah.
comparison between cloud cowork
Yeah.
and Codex.
Yeah.
But
That
there
would
is
be
something
good.
here which, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, the
But
reason why I even brought it up is because there is something here in terms of, like, there is like, you don't need to worry about trying to make your older applications more AI friendly, so to speak, because it really doesn't care. It's able to
mm,
click around and figure out what needs to be done and get the
mm,
job done for you, right? Like, even if with the
yeah.
most crooked of interfaces, again, that's where I've been using it. I've been using it with very old dated products which don't have the best of experience, but it's still able to
Right.
click through and figure its way around. So
That's very
yeah,
cool.
deep dive is
I
worth
mean,
it there.
that's the whole. There is the whole. What is it called? RPA or there is a
Yeah,
term.
robotic process automation. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
if
yeah.
that's the one.
This is the one that sort of takes over, right? I mean, it just can. I mean, hard to automate stuff. I mean, I always thought computer use was a really, really good, but none of this models sort of made it production quality, but feel like Codex sort of cracked that nut in here. So I can actually work with an EY layer.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and yeah, I think, but you're right. I think we should probably take it up in our next one with a little bit
Yeah,
more detail and deep dive.
yeah. All right, so let's move into the last story. I know you were excited about this. Me too. Let's talk about auto research. Like, what is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I think my introduction to a loop mechanic was initially with Jeffrey Huntley's Ralph loops, which is essentially now available as a first-class plugin on Cloud Code if you're using it, or if you just want to build it yourself, it's just a shell script, while loop, pretty much that, right? And it's got a prompt, it's got a promise, and it keeps running the prompt until the promise is reached. That's all there is to it. But then auto research, on the other hand, is about convergence. It's about one problem statement and one parameter to optimize for, and you keep running the experiments over and over again, and you converge on it. And that's been very very interesting for problem statements, which I earlier would have had to design all the iterations myself. I would have to design the pathways of exploring the problem statement and then come back to me. I used to do it with subagents, and most of the time I'm trying to orchestrate like a very complex way of figuring this thing out, right? The
Mm.
loop mechanic kind of makes it very interesting. It's still not easy. I won't say it's like just walk in the park. You just put a loop and automatically your experiments work for you. Picking that one parameter for an experiment, again, maybe in the next time we meet, I'll probably have a working example of this to show.
Yeah.
Uh, because when you have a problem statement and you're trying to hypothesize and
Yeah.
get to a solution, each
Yeah.
hypothesis has to progressively narrow down, which means it needs to have a guiding parameter on which it has to
Mm.
gradient descent, right? Technically speaking,
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's what it's doing, but then so for that to happen, the parameter selection is it's extremely crucial. So how does one do that? They need to have really good understanding of the experiment itself. So
Right.
yeah, but it's possible, right? Like if you can crack that and if you can really articulate what you mean by success for this particular line of reasoning, then leave it overnight and it's probably going to come back to you with answers.
Yeah. I mean, this is, yeah. I mean, when read that for the first time, I'd feel like, sorry, background. This is sort of a holy grail for AI agents, right? I mean, if I can have my AI agent sort of self improving, which is one of the hardest part, right? Hardest part is that you build this AI agent in sort of your clean room environment with all your test data and everything. And then you put it in the real world, it makes all sorts of silly mistakes that we all joke around at but real world could be messy, right? Unpredictable inputs, users using caveman prompting to instruct your agent to do stuff. I mean, in theory, this agents can essentially take that feedback when we all go to sleep, sort of work on that, sort of backwards, figure it out how it can improve himself. It's like, it's just amazing. We should definitely do that. I mean, I can think of 100 ideas, and including in my product, where I really want to start using this to have my agent sort of self-improve.
Yeah, the only only downside though is I've been burning through my token budget
Yeah, that's true.
because these things keep
But
running
this
at
is
night.
also,
And
yeah, I know. I'm not worried, but it's going to that whole idea of, right, imagining your software, right? You've done with your day, you haven't finished your work, you just put it in auto research. You come back next morning, it just sort of walk through your problem. It's just this whole Jarvis, right? Iron Man going into and saying, Jarvis, work on this problem while I go to the party.
see, net, I think even though I feel like a fellow who's complaining all the time, I mean, I'm very much aware of the fact that having this done just about like 3 4 years ago would mean like having a team which works
Mm.
maybe in a offset
Oh yeah. Oh
time
yeah.
zone, and that would
Uh,
have costed like at least 10x or a
yeah.
30 40x. And the cost of this
Oh
cost is one
yeah.
factor, but then the whole like ability to just have like the chat interface and just one few
Yeah.
files which you want to get done, and like this whole thing magically just works tirelessly for you
Yeah.
at a conceptual level that feels, yeah, both ridiculously amazing as well as quite
Yeah.
concerning.
I mean, Karpati has such a clear understanding. It's amazing how he drilled, sort of distilled it into three specific files in here. I mean, and making it open source, legendary. I mean, we should definitely play with this. We haven't considered this. Maybe down the line we could do yeah, you and I hack on this, man, live. It would be amazing.
Yeah, that would
Um,
be awesome.
all right. So that's kind of it. There is anything else you want to share?
No, nothing else. I think this is like a great first episode for, I guess,
Yeah.
the 10x builders. I think we'd love to hear in the comments, if at all, as builders, like what's the one thing that is bothering you,
Yeah.
and what's on your mind in terms of all these
Yeah.
things that's happening. At least I
Yeah.
feel overwhelmed all the time, and like
Yeah.
at some point, I just got to say, call it a day. I'll look at the news tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for joining, Harry. I know it's getting late there. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll connect again. Take care,
Yeah,
guys. Bye.
thanks, Neil.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.